Let's talk about what should have happened and what could happen now in Matthew's case for legal required family participation, and try to maybe fix what has happened. Immediately, the move-in IEP could be procedurally fixed. We could go back and do those things that I already told you about should have happened when Matthew's new school received his IEP. This, while not technically easy to fix, this is an easier fix. You need to go back, make sure that IEP is either being honored or that you put yourself on a timeline for a new IEP. Done deal right away, as soon as anyone else in the building is aware of the IEP or what is happening. Then the second step would be what should have happened is to then go on and repair that relationship. The things that should have happened were, let's summarize what could have happened. When Mrs. Winters meets Matthew's parents at that open house and they say, by the way, Matthew has an IEP, she says, oh yeah, yep. Hey, can you email me right away and we'll set up an appointment? Because I know open houses are busy. I'd like to meet with you right away to talk about it. And start that process of reviewing the IEP. Or that could have happened any time in the first weeks of school. When you do that and you honor the fact that that parent came to you with an IEP, even if you don't agree with the IEP, you're showing respect, you're pulling through communication and commitment. Those are all from that sunshine model from our text. It doesn't take much. It doesn't take a special education degree from a gen ed teacher to honor that piece of it and at least get things started. Mrs. Winters doesn't have to do it by herself. She can pull in other team members, but that is the first thing that should have happened once the school realizes there is an IEP, but also Mrs. Winters is approached by Matthew's parents at the open house. If those things had happened, when the meeting goes down where Mrs. Winters is really frustrated and says, this can't happen, this IEP is not applicable, we can't do these things, then that would have happened a lot differently and with already an established sort of mini plan in place, or at least some sort of relationship building opportunity so that frustrations on both mom and dad's part and on Mrs. Winters' part could be handled differently. That's what should have happened. Let's talk about what we could do now. Now that the damage is done, let's start from the end of the parent meeting with Mrs. Winters and those questions at the end of the case study. What do we do now? Well, I'm here with experience to tell you it can go two ways. I'm going to talk about the first best practiced way first. Someone needs to step in right away and help Mrs. Winters. We don't know why Mrs. Winters is in this spot. I'm not saying that gen ed teachers do this all the time, but I'm saying this unfortunately happens pretty frequently. She may not have the special education support she needs. She might have missed some of the procedures and things that need to happen. We need to step in and help somebody. Anybody needs to step in and help Mrs. Winters. We need to immediately start doing the work that should have been done upstream. We need to step in with the family and say, hang on a second, let's stop, let's review the IEP, and let's restart from here. Do we need a new IEP? Go through the IEP with Mrs. Winters. Take a look at those legal timelines and find out where we can go. Notify a special ed director, notify someone at the county, get some help in, and build a team with the family and let the family know that you're stepping in. There's a huge red flag here. You need to make sure you're communicating all of this with the family, documenting what is happening, and making sure the parents understand from here that we are back on track procedurally and that we're going to act in good faith and with best practice. That's my advice. That is even coming as far as to admitting the school district was wrong. We got off on the wrong foot. Let's rebuild from here. I think many schools, teachers, districts, special ed staff doubled down, don't want to admit that anything went wrong. And unfortunately, what sometimes, unfortunately frequently happens, is the second way this could go. And parents could go directly down the path of conflict with the school and go to due process. I've highlighted the steps for that on the next few slides, but what this essentially means is that we're going to go the conflict route, the dispute route, because the IEP is a legal document that Mrs. Winters is refusing to use, which means there's a direct point of conflict. It's not always this obvious, as in this case study, but this happens a lot. I've been involved in this. I've been involved in state complaints and due process. And I will tell you, when you sit down and talk about it afterwards or study it afterwards, there is always a point in a dispute or conflict in special education with a family where you can look back and say, if only someone had stepped in then and started us down a different path. That's a major red flag in the middle of the path. And that's what's happening here with this meeting with Mrs. Winters. It's not too late to step in, honor the family partnership, and take this down a different path. To review, from the meeting with Mrs. Winters, to answer those questions at the end of the case study, a staff member, school district member, special education support person, someone can step in and repair and do the upstream work immediately that should have already happened but hasn't had a chance to, and fix things as much as possible. Or I can guarantee this family is going to go down the path of conflict, dispute, and due process. And I've provided more resources for those on the following slides.